Hey, what's up, everybody? This is another episode of Sports-REUBEN-LIFE. I'm going to come at you here. I'm going to talk about the NFL playoff preview here, right? So you got four games here. The wild card round, you have the Buffalo Bills playing the Houston Texans in Houston, right? So you look at that game, we're just going to jump into it and start off right away, right? So Houston Texans are playing the Buffalo Bills. Both these teams are good quality teams. They have good records, and the point spread is only 3 points, right? So it's kind of a toss up, right? It's like they're pretty evenly matched, right? But if you look at their records, if you dig deep into the records, right, and you look at the stats, and let's look at the Buffalo Bills, right? Who did they beat? Number one, they ended on a 2-game losing streak to end the season, right? So that's not a good look for them, right? So who did they beat? They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. They beat the Cowboys, which are an average team. They beat Tennessee Titans, who are in the playoffs, right? And that's pretty much it. They really didn't beat anybody of note. But who did they lose to? They lost to the Baltimore Ravens. They lost to Cleveland, which they beat, and they lost to Philadelphia Eagles, right? And they lost to the Patriots, right? So they lost to some good teams, but they beat a lot of teams that weren't really that good. And so when you look at that, you say to yourself, how good is this really team? How good is this team really, right? So when you look at the stats and you look at their records, you say to yourself, well, they don't really have any notable wins. They have one good win against Pittsburgh. They have a good win against Dallas, which is an average team. They're middle of the pack, right? Then they beat Tennessee, which is a good team, put them to 4-1. So they beat a lot of teams that they were supposed to beat. So their strength of schedule was evident here. They got the good victory. So they're a consistent, disciplined team, right? But when it comes to the playoffs, you have to be able to beat good teams, right? So who did the Texans beat, right? So the Texans, they have a record of 10-6, right? They lost their last game to Tennessee, which is, by the way, in the playoffs too. And so they beat the New England Patriots. They lost to Baltimore. They they beat Kansas City, playoff bound, right? And then so they beat the Chargers, weren't very good, but they lost to the Saints. Those are playoff teams, right? So they beat a little bit more good teams than, say, their opponent, the Buffalo Bills, but they still don't have a huge impressive resume, right? They beat the teams that aren't good that they were supposed to beat, which talks about their discipline and consistency, but it also doesn't help make you think that they're going to advance deep into the playoffs, right? It's just not going to happen. If you can't beat good teams, then you're going to struggle and you're going to get eliminated right away. So these two teams are pretty evenly matched in terms of who they beat. They're consistent. They're well-disciplined teams. I think Deshaun Watson is going to be the difference maker in this whole series here, and I think that Buffalo, although is a good team, I think this is going to be the end of the line for them. Now, Tennessee, if they can, the reason why I say that Deshaun Watson's company is going to win this game is because they're going to control time of possession, and so when you have a team that doesn't really beat a whole bunch of teams that are good, time of possession becomes a factor. So when you start having that, you run into the situation where you don't have control time possession. You can't get rushing first downs. You can't keep advancing the ball. Now, Deshaun Watson being a unique quarterback in terms of he has the ability, a Lamar Jackson type of ability to run the ball. He's not quite as athletic as Lamar Jackson, but he does have the ability, and they beat the New England Patriots as a result of that. It's a winning formula for a quarterback that is willing to run a little bit so that you can keep advancing the ball and getting the first downs and you can keep going. So that's a really big factor. And so Buffalo has a decent defense, but they're going to get exposed, and I think that Deshaun Watson and company are going to go ahead and beat them, right? So you have the next game, right? You have that was a Saturday matchup. This next game is going to be Tennessee Titans at the New England Patriots, right? The New England Patriots, it's hard to bet against them because you have Tom Brady and company, Bill Belichick. Their defense is pretty good, right? They have a decent, well-oiled defense. Everybody says, well, Tom Brady's old. He's not going to be able to do it. You got to beat that guy. You're playing the Patriots at Foxborough, okay? You got to be like a Baltimore Ravens style team. You got to be Lamar Jackson and company to be able to win that game. It's going to be very hard to beat a team in the Patriots at home in bad weather, right? You're asking a lot right there, right? So defensively, the Patriots have the number one defense in the NFL in terms of yards allowed. Okay? They're not giving up the pass. They're not giving up the run. They're just well-rounded. They only giving up 14 points a game. Okay? So then let's look at Tennessee's offense. Where do they stand? Okay? Tennessee, right, is middle of the pack. They're only scoring 25. They're middle of the pack in running and passing. So if they're pass happy, they're going to have to really be able to produce. I don't see that happening. When you have a very good defense in the New England Patriots, I think that's going to help control time of possession again. Tom Brady doesn't have to do a lot here. He can't turn over the ball. He can't throw interceptions, and he can't make critical mistakes. In other words, he's got to be able to be situationally sound. That's all he has to do. Tom Brady just has to play sound football, and they're going to get this victory, right? Because the defense is going to hold them. The defense, the Tennessee Titans, their offense is not as prolific. They're not as strong enough so that they can actually have an impact on it. So I don't see New England being able to. I see them advancing to the next round. It would have been interesting for them to get a bye and have everybody rest up, but that's just the way it goes. It is hard to get to the Super Bowl and win it playing on the wild card round. But if anybody could do it, Bill Belichick and company can do it. Because of that number one ranked defense, you can't bet against them at any games they're playing, right? Except for maybe the Lamar Jackson situation, because he's such a unique athlete that it's very difficult to stop him. Although I do theorize that New England has a couple tricks to slow him down. So I think that's going to be very interesting, but I think that's going to be a good game. I think the Patriots are going to win this game by about 14 points, right? Even though they're not favored by that much, I don't think it's going to be a close game at all, because I think that the New England Patriots, they're very familiar with going into the playoffs, and, they're only favored by 4.5 points. I think it's going to be a 14-point game here. Tom Brady's going to quarterback this whole thing. He threw for 4,000 yards this year and 24 touchdowns. It was a pedestrian year for him, but it's a tremendous year as a quarterback in general, right? He didn't turn over the ball a whole bunch, but I think Tom Brady and company, they're going to secure this victory, and it's going to all be about time of possession, and it's going to be about rushing first downs, and I think they're going to be able to do it. And their defense is going to come big, and they're going to produce big, because if there's snow in Foxborough, you could forget about trying to score the ball. So that's going to be Saturday's games. You have the Buffalo Bills playing the Texans, Houston Texans, Tennessee Titans playing the New England Patriots. And then you have, on Sunday's game, you have the Minnesota Vikings playing the New Orleans Saints. Now, this is a very interesting game. Now, the Saints are favored by 8 points, but I think that this game is going to be a lot closer than people are letting on. It's a very interesting wild card game, because you have the veteran, some say the best quarterback of all time, but there is no such thing as the best quarterback of all time. But you have Drew Brees and company playing in the divisional round, only because of the play of the San Francisco 49ers and company, right? And so you look at the Vikings. Let's look at the Vikings record, right? Let's just kind of dig into it. Who did they beat that was good? Is there a 10-6 record as a result of them beating quality opponents, or did they get in because they beat who they were supposed to beat, right? So who did they beat that was notable, right? Looking at their record, the Cowboys. They beat the Cowboys. They beat the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And that's pretty much it. They didn't beat anybody of note. They beat the Oakland Raiders, who were average at best, right? So the Minnesota Vikings have their hands cut out for them, right? They have their task cut out for them, because it's going to be a very tall order, because who did they lose to? They lost to good teams, playoff teams. They lost to Green Bay. They lost to Seattle. They lost to Kansas City, right? And they lost to Green Bay again. That's 4 losses of their 6 losses that are playoff teams that are currently in the playoffs. That doesn't look good for them, right? It's still going to be an interesting game, but it doesn't look good for them, right? And then you look at who they're playing, right? Who are they playing? The New Orleans Saints. Who did they beat, right? They have some good victories, but let's take a look at it. They beat the Houston Texans in the playoffs. Seattle Seahawks, they're in the playoffs, right? They beat the Tennessee Titans, they're in the playoffs, right? So they beat 3 teams that are in the playoffs. Now, you say to yourself, well, the Saints didn't beat that many people that were impressive too. Well, they were 13-3. Who did they lose to? Los Angeles Rams, right? Who could have made the playoffs, right? The only reason why Los Angeles Rams are not in the playoffs is because of the 49ers and Seahawks. Their division was the toughest division in the NFL, right? Hands down, right? Who else did they lose to? The San Francisco 49ers. So they lost to 2 of the teams. They lost to 2 people in that division, where the Frisco's are ranked number 1 team in the NFL, essentially, right? They have home field advantage playoff throughout the whole playoffs, right? And so the Saints lost to the 49ers 48-46. That was a very good game, but more importantly, they didn't really beat anybody that was really amazing. So the Saints have a quality team. You still have Drew Brees, who is a Super Bowl champ, but I don't see them being able to go deeper in the playoffs than the NFC, than the championship game, right? I don't see them getting to the Super Bowl just because who have you beaten? You have to beat good quality teams so you can go to the Super Bowl. See, that's the biggest marker there, right? Some of these divisions are so weak that that's what you're kind of seeing there, where nobody really beats anybody of note, right? And so that's when you look at that. Is Minnesota good enough, right? Is Minnesota good enough to overcome that, right? I don't think they are. I think the Saints get this victory because I think Drew Brees is going to be on point. He sees that it's kind of the tail end of his career. This might be his last year, so he might give a little extra oomph on those games. The last game of the wild card is going to be the Seattle Seahawks versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, everybody says that this game is not going to be very interesting. Well, the Eagles are only underdogs by 1.5 points, which is interesting, right? Because you look at the whole situation and you say to yourself, well, the Eagles only squeaked in because they were in the weakest division in the NFL, right? Then you say to yourself, who did they beat, right? Who did they beat? They beat the Cowboys, right? And then you look in their schedule, they beat Buffalo. Buffalo's in the playoffs. They beat Green Bay. They're in the playoffs, right? So those are only really two notable people that they've beaten, but Green Bay is a very good team and they beat them. So that right there, the Eagles have a chance, right? I don't know if they can do it. They've been very inconsistent, although their last 4 games, they were 5-7, okay, going into the last quarter of the season, and they won 4 in a row. They didn't win 4 in a row the whole year. They had just finished coming off a 3-game losing streak. So that being said, they do have the ability to get these victories. They could move on, and I think this is kind of the upset of the day here. I don't think, right? I don't think the Seattle Seahawks are going to be able to get this victory, and I'm going to tell you why, because of their running attack, right? They lost their games because they lost their running attack. Their running game is going to disappear. Marshawn Lynch has got 5 carries in him at most. It's not enough to be consistent. It's not enough to get the victory. So, but who did they beat? See, the thing about their record, injuries are going to really destroy the Seattle Seahawks, but they beat some good teams, right? They beat Pittsburgh at the time they were playoff bound, right? They beat the Rams. They beat Baltimore. They lost to Cleveland 30-16. That could have went the other way, but they beat the 49ers and they beat the Eagles. They beat Minnesota. They beat some good teams, right? But their running back, their running core got depleted. When they played in their season finale against San Francisco, they somehow came back. But the first half of that game, they had 0 first downs, dude. They were getting destroyed in that game. And I think San Francisco let off the gas, and that's why that game ended up the way it did, right? So when you look at the whole situation, when you look at the whole situation with the Seattle Seahawks and the Philadelphia Eagles, you have a very dynamic game where I think that Philadelphia has a chance to get to the next round. Now, after the next round, I don't think they're going to go any further, but I think Seattle could get knocked out. I think them losing that game, the very last game, to the San Francisco 49ers hurt them because now Marshawn Lynch and company, they don't have time to get up to speed and get into football shape. You just can't get into football shape in 1 week. That's why it takes these guys a long time. So Marshawn Lynch could get hurt, right? He was on vacation. He was retired, right? Now, could he get in shape? Of course he can. Could miracles happen? Yes, they can. The second half of that San Francisco-Seattle game last week was a good indication that it was possible, right? And so when you look at that, what do you think can happen with this game? I think Philadelphia comes out with the victory. I think they win 35-21. I don't think it's going to be very close, but I think that Seattle is going to find a way to win. Find a way to score, and I think Philadelphia is going to come out with the victory and advance to the next round. They're coming. They have momentum. Seattle has a depleted running attack, and I think that they're going to be scrambling for a solid game plan. Now, they played a really good San Francisco 49ers, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles are just good enough to kind of dominate this game. Time of possession, the whole night. When you don't have a running attack at all, you can't hold on to the ball and get running first downs, and you can't keep drives alive. So you have to get lucky. Although Russell Wilson and company are very good, I don't think it's going to be enough. So this is my NFL playoff wild card preview. Tell me what you guys think. Like, subscribe. Tell me in the comments and all the good stuff like that. Let me know what you guys think. Bye.